Welcome back. I'm Andy Singleton. This is another edition of Hanging Einstein. I am joined today with Karl Safchick of DLF Football. And I apologize for not having an episode the last week and a half or so, actually 2 weeks now. I got extremely busy with life and didn't have the time in the schedule to fit. But I want to thank Karl for joining me today. We've actually been recording off air for about an hour now, trying to figure out this audio. And so Karl is a great sport, and welcome. Good morning. Good afternoon.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It should be fun chat.
Well, we'll see how it goes. You are somebody I have a lot of admiration and respect for from how I've gotten to know you over the last couple of years, being involved in this industry. I admire and appreciate your work ethic, your passion, everything like that. Your stances on things. You're pretty strong about your convictions and things, and I appreciate that and admire that. Again, the idea of this show, I was just telling you, is to basically just give people a different way of connecting with you and opening up a little, if you will. So I know you're a big Redskins fan. You are from just outside of Washington, D.C., is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And how you grew up, you're born and raised there?
Yeah, pretty much. I'm about 20 miles outside of D.C. I go there a lot, for nightlife and stuff like that. While I am a Redskins fan, I'm a D.C. sports fan in general. I do consider football the one sport where I try to take a unbiased view on the team. When it comes to hockey or baseball or whatever, I can scream at the TV, tell the refs they're wrong, all that, and just be a fan. But with football, I try not to be as much of a fan. Although I would like to see the team do well, I like to try to take a unbiased view and kind of like an outsider point of view when it comes to the team. Okay.
Now, football obviously is like your big thing.
Yeah.
But you are a sports fan across the board. I know you're a big Nationals fan. Does it pain you to see the Mets having this success, being that they're one of your bitter East Coast rivals?
Yeah, that's true. What's funny is my co-host on the DLF podcast, Jared Behar, we're basically rivals in every sport because he's a Mets, Rangers, Knicks fan. And Giants, obviously. So we're rivals in every sport. So I don't know. I kind of like when my teams are out of it, I'll root for his teams just for the heck of it. But yeah, it pains me a little bit, but also it's like kind of cool because the Mets never really do very well. So you're a Yankees fan, am I correct?
I am a Yankees fan. So this is kind of a tough thing for me. Although I'm talking to a lot of friends and colleagues in the area. That are also Yankee fans. We've come to the consensus that it's not the Mets we dislike, it's Met fans we dislike. Just because of they're always trying to rub it in, and it's just always like, this woe is me attitude, and they're very, it's hard to deal with the Met fans. The actual team, the players, I love the players.
Right.
And I'm a big prospect hound, so like, I've been following this team. This is such a young team. I've been following, the core of this team for a long time now. DeGrom is my favorite player, period, in baseball. So I'm happy for the Mets, and it's a good thing for New York City.
Well, who's worse, Mets fans or Eagles, Flyers, Phillies fans?
Yeah, I'm a Jet fan as well, so I don't get the whole Eagle-Giant rivalry.
Okay.
And I miss out on the Phillies and Mets rivalry as well. So for me, it's more Boston fans than Philly fans. And from everything I've been told, I've only been to Philly once, and that was, I think, my 5th grade class trip. And
there's a reason you haven't gone back, obviously.
No, I want to go back, and it's crazy. It's like a 45-minute drive. Not 45 minutes, maybe like 2-hour drive, but it's like a quick drive from New York. And from everything I hear, it's basically like Brooklyn in so many ways, just in terms of heritage and culture and attitude and everything like that. So I feel kind of sad that I don't get there more often. Washington as well. I went there for my son's 5th grade class trip, which was he's a junior in high school now. So this was maybe it was 8th grade. I'm sorry. This was in the last 6-7 years or so. And I just remember going to DC and thinking, this is beautiful. And driving by the stadium, you can see the stadium from 95, correct? From the highway.
No, not from 95. Well, actually, yeah, maybe you can get a good view from 95. Yes.
It was one of the highways. I thought it was. It could. I could be wrong, but I remember being on the highway and seeing the stadium and thinking, man, I gotta get back here. And you know what was crazy was everything seemed so clean to me in DC. Like,
yes.
Everywhere you went, like every street was like immaculate. Like I felt like I could eat off it. And
I really do love that city, and I'm not far outside of Baltimore either, and it's night and day between those two cities.
Yeah, I actually spent a great deal of time my whole life going down to Baltimore. My uncle lives down there. He's actually in Towson now, but
Oh wow.
when I was a big Ricky Henderson fan, he was still living like 6 blocks from Memorial Stadium, so we would we'd walk to a bunch of games. But are you a big Capitals and Bullets, or do you call them the Wizards?
Right. Well, I mean, now you just have to call them the Wizards. Yeah, I do remember when they were the Bullets. And yeah, I am a huge Capitals fan. I'd actually say that hockey's my second favorite sport, and that's probably somewhat recent. I mean, I was a big basketball fan, but hockey's kind of taken over my secondary passion, and I'd say that's probably within the past like 8 years that's changed.
Right.
But I really love watching hockey. And like I said, I can be unbiased with hockey. It's almost like I have this romantic relationship with hockey, whereas with football, it's like a business relationship, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. I totally get that. And sometimes you feel like you have to watch games just because you need to know what's happening, and you don't even really want to watch it, or you kind of like you don't have a rooting interest in the teams or the game, but you kind of have to know what's going on with the players. And for me personally, it's extended to like college now, where I'm watching college games on Tuesday nights now just to get a glimpse of guys, and I'm like, you know, this is like becoming, this is beyond obsession now. It's becoming
right.
A totally different animal. But I agree with you with the hockey thing. I think there's a resemblance between football and hockey, just in terms of the style of play, and where that you don't get that with basketball and baseball as much. But so let me ask you, what do you do for your main job? What do you do to pay the bills?
I'm actually in the service industry. I've been back and forth pretty much my whole life, either going to school, doing this, and either bartending, waiting tables, stuff like that. So currently I'm doing that as well, and I'm just trying to get my foot in the door, man, in radio. And I've done more and more each year. You know, I obviously I got my foot in the door a couple years ago, and now I'm doing weekly appearances on, you know, Sirius XM, different podcasts, stuff like that. So I'm really trying to just focus in on, you know, my career as that, and just doing different things, talking to different people, obviously networking with different people, so I can do a full-time job on the radio rather than part-time right now.
Right. Well, I'll tell you right now, I wasn't going to give you anything. I was going to give you a compliment. You definitely have a good voice for it. That's one of the reasons I shifted into trying to do videos, because I hate my voice. And I just felt like, you know, if maybe people saw everything else that was going on around me, it might add to the total package. You might forget how awful I sound. But
well, for me, it's kind of the opposite. I hear that I have a good voice, but also people tell me I have a great face for radio too, which I think is a compliment.
Yeah, no, that's yeah, I've heard that. A lot of people use that, and I was going to give you another compliment, and I think you have a face for television.
Well,
so
thank you.
Where the road may travel and take you. But the service industry in terms of you do a lot of traveling. Are you stationed nearby home? How do you have the time, I should say, to dedicate as much that you do to your craft in fantasy football as well?
It's tough. Well, you know what? I mean, it's because I like what I do. I like doing radio. I love football. That's why I got into this. I mean, I feel like I feel at home when I'm watching football. I mean, I played football growing up. I was pretty good until I stopped growing. But by the time I got to high school and I stopped growing and everybody else continued to grow, that's when I stopped being as good as them. But no, I mean, I love the sport, really, and I think that it's great for kids to play. I think that it's great for, you know, for grown men to just share their opinions about, you know, we watch. You can have 10 different guys watch one play, and 10 different people, I shouldn't say guys, you can have 10 different people watch one play of football and come up with 10 different observations about it. People could be like, oh, well, that wide receiver made a great play, and then somebody else could say, well, the quarterback, put the ball where he could make a great play, and somebody else could say, well, I thought the cornerback, wasn't covering him well enough, and then somebody else could say, well, the defensive end wasn't getting enough pressure on the quarterback to make that happen. So it's such an intricate sport and such a chess match that is physical, and it has that like beauty between art and science that, I mean, obviously pretty much anybody listening to this knows exactly what I'm talking about because they're probably a football fan as well. And then when you get into the fantasy football aspect, you kind of are able to, and especially Dynasty in my case, you're able to take that like general manager approach that none of us are able to be athletes at this point in our lives, at least not to a professional extent, playing professional NFL football. So you get to like relive that by being a quote unquote GM. So yeah, I mean, I love it obviously, or else I wouldn't be doing it all the time.
Right. Now, I was going to ask you, you mentioned Dynasty, so, and I should have asked this right off the bat, and I apologize for not doing this, but your Twitter handle is on the overlay, so you don't have to worry about that. People can find you there. But you do write for DLF Football. You do a podcast with them as well. The whole lot of you guys are spectacular. Actually, Scotty Fish has become a good friend of mine over the last couple of years, and he just has, I think he's Batman. I honestly do, because he just has this crazy schedule, but yet he's always around. It's just weird.
And he's always happy to help everybody. Scott's good
exactly. He's the best. But now you mentioned Dynasty that you do. Now let me. I'm a little all over the place with this, but
that's all right.
Again, the point of this show is to kind of, dial in with some guys that we all know and respect, or for people watching, people that follow you, to get a better idea and a glimpse, or people follow me that don't know anything about you, why they should be paying attention to you more, things of that nature. So with that being said, I don't. As far as the advice goes, this is not going to be a show where I'm gonna ask you your sleeper of the week and that kind of stuff. But we can talk about football in terms of how you're involved in. And you mentioned Dynasty. I've been big in Dynasty probably the last two or 3 years. But before that, it was all redraft for me. So how long have you been in Dynasty, and what made you get into that? And what are the advantages for it that you see? Because as you mentioned, it gives you more of the general manager feel, but I'm going to let you explain a little bit, like why Dynasty for you? What was the big selling point?
Well, I started about 12-ish years ago. You could probably, if people are looking back, they could probably do the math. My first pick was Priest Holmes, my first round pick when we did a Dynasty startup. And it was just something that all of my friends were getting into. I was in a 16-team league, which a lot of my close friends were in, and then mutual friends among us, and it was really fun. And I never really got Dynasty for a long time, although I was playing it. I never really understood the long-term ramifications, and then probably about 5 or 6 years in, I started saying, okay, you know what, I'm tired of losing. I know I'm going to lose this year no matter what, so let me just go ahead and rebuild my team. And I started, I think that was the year Matt Ryan came out, Hakeem Nicks, that rookie year. I think I got Hakeem Nicks, Jeremy Maclin, maybe Michael Crabtree, and I really just rebuilt my whole team. I think that was Beanie Wells and Sean Green all came out that year. So I just said, you know what, I'm just going to rebuild, and then I did. And probably about 3 or 4 years later, I won my first championship in that league, which is ultra competitive. I mean, we were one of the first leagues to implement IDP. We did drafting offensive lines. We had a head coach auction. I mean, this league was really in depth. So I just really got into that, and then I think it was a little over 2 years ago now, my little brother was on Twitter. This was before I was ever on Twitter. He was saying how he was on Twitter. I'm like, oh, that's a social media network. I don't need to get in. I have Facebook. I can see my friends on there. I can never see myself getting on Twitter. He says, no, you got to try it out. So I tried it out, and then I started following, Adam Schefter, Matt Berry, stuff like that. So, and then I trickled down, and I said, oh, well, I already had followed DLF for rankings to use for my league. And I just started talking to all those guys, and they were all great guys. I mean, Eric Dickens and Eric Carter were there, and I mentioned Jarrett before. All these guys were like ready and open to talk to me, so I just started talking to them. I guess they found me intelligent enough to say, hey, why don't you submit an article? We have a contest going on, and if you win, you can become a DLF writer. So I did, and the rest is history.
That's awesome. And so now the obvious segue to that would be, with everything that's going on with the DFS. Again, I was late to the Dynasty League. I mean, I've been playing fantasy sports since I was probably 8 years old, making up games myself, and I'm 40 now. So, I mean, at least 30 years I've been playing fantasy sports. And it wasn't until, like I said, the last 3 or 4 years I got into Dynasty. This is the first. I've dabbled with the DFS the last couple of years, but this is the first year I've really paid more attention to it. And it kind of figures that this is the year that now is kind of we're seeing this explosion and self-implosion at the same time. It's kind of scandalous, but I think it's also at the same time here to stay. So there's going to be some reshifting of the landscape, if you will. But what's your whole take with it? I mean, do you think it's just outgrown itself already? Do you think it's here to stay? What do you feel like as far as this whole controversy that's going on now?
I would hope it's here to stay. I hope that there's a little bit more clear picture of what's going on behind the scenes, and whether they're doing anything wrong or not, I don't think is even the issue. I think it's that's the perception at this point. I mean, I could think that they're not doing anything wrong, but that doesn't mean that Joe Schmo, John Q. Public thinks that they're doing anything wrong. So they're definitely going to have to do some things to show the public that there's nothing going on wrong behind the scenes. And that may very well be the case, because I'm like you. This is my first year doing DFS, and I'm having a blast doing it. Actually, my show is sponsored by FanDuel, and we've all been playing on there, and me and all my buddies, I mean, all of them have gotten into it as well. And I mean, the first thing my cousin told me this morning, we just went and got lunch. First thing he tells me is, let me show you my lineup for this week. I mean, that's what we're all talking about. Because, I mean, you could just set that lineup. You could set 20 lineups. It's a lot of fun. And I think it is actually a perfect complement to Dynasty. I'm actually getting away from redraft leagues. I think the only one I'm in is the Scott Fish Bowl, come to think of it. So I think Dynasty and DFS really complement each other really well. I enjoy the mixture of the two.
Okay. Yeah, I would agree, and I'll get back to that in a second. But what does Karl eat for lunch?
Today I had I think it was called a Mediterranean chicken sub. It was, I don't know, it was pretty basic. It was chicken and bacon and lettuce and barbecue sauce.
Would you repeat that order? At another point. I mean, would that come back to your personal menu, or is that a one and done for you?
I'll go back to it. I actually, coincidentally enough, I've lost 50 pounds in this past calendar year. So I don't go eat out as much anymore as I used to, and definitely don't have the bacon on my sandwiches like I used to. But it's my day off, so I
was that a 5 with the 0 after it, or a 5 with a 1 in front? I couldn't hear if you said 15 or 50.
50.
Oh man! Well, congratulations to you. That's a huge accomplishment. There might actually be a lot of people watching that are curious how this transformation came about. Any secrets or tips?
I mean, really, no. And I don't think and look, I'm not an expert on that. I think really the key is just eating smaller portions, watching what you eat, and exercising. I mean, I really went about doing it the right way. If I could, as I said, I'm no expert. I just worked hard to get at it. I just got tired of being a larger frame, I guess.
I think you said it right there when you just say you worked hard at it. I mean, it's like anything in life. You want something, anything is possible. It's just the dedication to it. But man, seriously, I hope I don't seem like I'm making light of it, and no pun intended with the light. But that really is amazing. I'm trying to lose 20, and I haven't been able to get more than 2 off. So to get to the 50 mark is something to be very proud of. And
I appreciate that. That's really nice of you.
Well, no, I'm impressed. I'm blown away.
I had to put it on to be able to take it off, though. You got to remember that.
I guess that if you say it like that, I guess that is true. So shame on you for putting it on in the first place. But kudos to you for getting it off.
Thank you.
But going back to the DFS stuff, yeah, I do think it complements the Dynasty, like you said, because it allows you to, play for today and, not have to worry about next week or next season or whatever as you do in Dynasty. But, it keeps you in it all week. If you have a season-long team and you're 1-4 or 1-5 right now, I mean, what's the incentive, to play spoiler? And what if it's a league that you don't really know anybody, or it's not an active league? I mean, it's pretty much, the top half of the league is the only ones that are still playing at this point, and it's kind of like a ghost town. But there's also been a lot of talk with the draft only stuff, where like the MFL 10s, where some kind of combination of I personally think, like, in some of the season longs I'm in my home leagues, I want to put a mulligan rule in where you're allowed one switch per week, that you can exchange one guy from your bench into your starting lineup, after the fact, when you see how the game's played out. I mean, it might sound like dumbing it down a little, cool. But
I like it. And you know what? I love weird rules in fantasy football.
Right.
As I told you, I mean, we drafted offensive lines and had head coaching auctions in my one league, in my one Dynasty league, and then we also did defensive game planning. So it was IDP, but you also got to say, okay, if these players, there was 8 different defensive formations that you could have according to how you set your lineup. And and whichever one you picked, you could focus in. Like, say you're going up against Le'Veon Bell this week, and you think he's going to have a good week. Well, I would start 3 linebackers, focus on Le'Veon Bell, and if my 3 linebackers all went over 10 points each, or 30 points total, or if my one middle linebacker went over 10 points, then I got half of Le'Veon Bell's points.
Okay.
And I've heard so many cool rules. I mean, you do victory points, you do head-to-head points. I'm all for making Dynasty weird, and I wish I could get this plug right, because I don't remember who it was, but I want to say it was Ryan McDowell, who did a series called Making Dynasty Weird, and just had all these different rules that were just obviously weird, and I think that's really cool. Whatever you want to implement, if it's fair and everyone agrees, I think that's awesome. I like your mulligan rule. I've never heard about that one before, but maybe I'll implement that one.
Yeah, I can't take all the credit. I saw that, somewhere along the lines, one of my followers had that or something like that, or I don't know, maybe I saw it in a chat room. I don't remember where I saw it, but the way they had, maybe it was even a site that was trying to come out. I honestly couldn't tell you the source of it, but it definitely wasn't my own idea. And it was, I think it was, you allowed one, for the season or something like that. And it should be one a week. I mean, we go through all this, all these debates on who to start, and sometimes you look at your bench and it's stacked, and you got Michael Vick, who gets hurt, and shame on you if you're playing Michael Vick anyway. But let's just use him as an example. He goes out in the second quarter after passing, what was it? It was something ridiculous, 4 completions for 6 total yards. I mean, how that even happens, I don't know, but you look on your bench and maybe you got somebody that had 6 points and you'd prefer to have that in. I don't know. It just seems like it should be a weekly thing.
We also had a rule in that same league I'm talking about where, and this, you would find this interesting given the example you just gave, if you have the backup for the starter, so if you had Michael Vick, you could roster Landry Jones, and you would get Landry Jones's points for that week as well. So I went years with Matt Ryan as my quarterback, and I had whoever his backup was at the time. There's been a revolving door there, but I always rostered his backup quarterback no matter what.
Nice. Well, we in a different league, another home league, there is a backups that you can put in, but it's really only for game time decision guys. That if you got somebody in your lineup and he doesn't start the game, your backup will assume it. It has nothing to do. If he starts the game, that's it.
Right.
He could play one play and be done, and you're screwed. Now, I mentioned earlier that you're, strong in your convictions and beliefs, and I've had a couple interesting yet serious topics that we've talked about over the last year and a half, 2 years or so. I don't honestly remember what they were at this point, but the one that does stick out to me was maybe a month or so ago where you said, that's it, I'm not doing starter sits on Twitter anymore. I'm not doing it for free. And we had to talk about it, and I said, I support you. And it might have seemed like I was like being sarcastic, but I really did support you in that. And you said, he said, I appreciate it, but I'm sure you'll go back to it at some point, and I won't be mad if you do. And I don't know if those are your exact words or something to that point. And you were correct. I have indeed gone back to answering people's questions when they ask them. But I do think of you every time I'm answering these now. So how is this fight going for you?
I've probably caved a little bit as well, and I know the next question is going to be why. Why did I take that stance? Because it sounds like I'm just being a I don't know how kid friendly this show is. It sounds like I'm being an a-hole. But really, the main reason, well, there's a few reasons, honestly. One is that's not my expertise, I don't think. I mean, I would say I'm better than average at saying start sits, but I would consider my expertise just dynasty strategy or overall fantasy strategy, like a philosophy of fantasy football. I really like to take like an abstract view of it and try to find different ways to become better. I look at the macro rather than the micro. So I feel like I would do I don't want to say subpar, but I would just do just as good as anybody else giving start sit advice. So part of it was just that my own inability to make a better decision than anybody else. But a big part of it is there's a lot of sites that charge for this information, and they do a great job. They do way better than me. And as a whole, this industry is way underfunded. I mean, I don't want to like sit here and say I need to get paid more, but you know, I'm working in a restaurant as well as this. So I mean, I would rather just be doing fantasy football, my writing, and my radio shows for a living. And I know there's a lot of people out there that do, and there's a lot of people out there that can't, because it's just a way that it's one industry where you're giving away free samples 90% of the time and then charging for such a small thing. I mean, you could get a premium membership at DLF for a year by depositing $10 on FanDuel. So I mean, we're basically charging $0 for this premium membership. So, and it's not even just for me. It's so many people out there that are working their butts off to try to make a living, and it's, as I mentioned, it's just an underfunded for all the billions and billions of dollars that go into the fantasy football industry. The people who give advice, the people who write and do radio shows and stuff like that, podcasts in my case, just aren't paid enough. And I know that sounds a little bit selfish because obviously I'm in that industry as well. But it's really, I see all these other great writers and that are even better than me that aren't getting paid enough.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's selfish. And it's a tough line to draw. Like, where do you start saying, well, I put enough time and dedication into this. Where's the payoff? You know, because it's not. It you know, it takes up my time to do this, and time is money, and it's an interesting question because there's no regulation, you know, there's no form or registration you got to fill out to start this. Anybody can just start at any point. Right. It becomes oversaturated at times, but at the same time, you don't want to discourage anybody from doing it, because just the same way you and I jumped into it, like nobody discouraged us from doing it. So right. I'm not saying that to discourage anybody from doing it. It's just, you know, it's really a matter of time and, you know, and commitment. And I guess, you know, the saying the cream rises to the top is, you know, after a period of time, I guess that's what happens is if you're seeing success and you're good at it, you stick around. And those that don't, or don't have the time, or don't have, you know, the wherewithal to make it a passion, it goes back to you with the diet, hard work. I mean, it really comes down to hard work, and you know, it will come down to that. But what are some of your other interests and hobbies? I know we've just talking about sports this whole time. I had Sigmund on talking about world travel. I had Josh Moore talking about all his collections of art and giving us a tour of his home and some of his paintings that he's collected along the ways. what are some of the things you're into when you're not dealing sports?
Man, to be honest, sports are a huge part of my life. I mean,
and it's okay if that is
right, and that is kind of it. I'm really into the nightlife. I go out a lot. I'm a big craft beer drinker. I love like just trying out different, whether they're local brews or from anywhere really. I love trying different IPAs. I'm really, to be honest, I'm really into like the Science Channel and stuff like that. Like I love like watching like different like I don't know if you've heard of like Through the Wormhole, like with the astrophysics
with Morgan Freeman.
Absolutely, those type shows. I mean, I even love Ancient Aliens, which I get catch a lot of flack for, but I really do love that show as well.
If I show you my DVR right now, my fiance has Ancient Aliens, Through the Wormhole, Planet Earth, all like 4 variations of Planet Earth.
Yeah.
So there's literally like maybe an hour of recording space left for stuff I want to see. But yeah, no, I'm totally with you on all that. It's amazing, like just how. And then we can go to a whole nother tangent here, because when you start talking about the Through the Wormhole stuff and the science stuff, and then you just think about how like insignificant this fantasy football is in the grand scheme of things, but yet we're so passionate about it and we put so much time into it. And if you look at like from for lack of a better expression, but from God's eyes, like it's really like just a speck, and it's like
absolutely
nothing.
And then even to pivot off that, I'm really into politics, which I'll keep off of here, which way I'm going with it. But I mean, it even leaks onto my Twitter a lot, which I don't think the higher ups at DLF appreciate, but because I definitely split half of my listener base or follower base down the middle. But I definitely keep up with that a lot too. I keep up with the Republican race, with the Democrat race, what their issues are, which I think get lost a lot of times, and it gets turned into just who we think would be a better movie star president rather than what are the issues. So yeah, I'm really into like the big picture type stuff, like I said, with science, with politics, obviously, when I'm not having fun with fantasy football or with sports.
Right. Well, I just saw an alert earlier that Webb has dropped out of the race. If that moves the needle,
he's probably still complaining he didn't get enough time to speak.
Yes, and I think that was probably the reason he made this announcement, was to get a few minutes of airtime.
Right. Exactly.
So actually, hey, wherever you are, we're mentioning you on this channel right now.
Did you happen to see the Saturday Night Live version of the Democratic debate? That was amazing. I thought that was great. I did think that was Larry
great.
David does an amazing Bernie Sanders, and
he really does. I was surprised to see him. It was perfect role for him. I forget her name. The other one was doing Hillary. She's like extremely funny to me, but also like frightening to look at sometimes with the facial expression she makes. But they do. I love when they do political satire, and it's. I'm into politics myself. It's just hard for me to discuss it because it just opens such a can of worms.
It does.
Whenever you mention anything political, and you're never gonna change people's minds. So it's like I'll stick to the fantasy football. I might be able to convince you should start, LeGarrette Blount this week, but I can't really waver who you vote for. So you mentioned craft beers. I'm not a beer drinker myself. I will if I have to. I prefer vodka, but it seems as though the football industry and IPAs and craft beers and everything go hand in hand.
It does seem that way, doesn't it? I love it too. I love discussing it with other people.
And I feel like because of my personal, my taste buds, I'm kind of on the fringe of really being, in the inner circle of things because of my lack of hops drinking. But any particular ones that you recommend or that you like?
Yeah,
or
absolutely.
Stay away from?
Locally, if you can ever get your hands on a loose cannon by a company called Heavy Seas, which is out of Baltimore, that is probably my favorite. But it's almost like picking my favorite child, even though I don't have any children. But it's I imagine it would be like picking my favorite child. Another one is Dale's Pale Ale, which is out of Colorado, and actually they have a brewery in North Carolina now. So I think most of the beer that I get is from the North Carolina plant. Dogfish Head, which is out of, I believe, Frederick, Maryland. No, Dogfish Head's in Delaware, I believe. One of those two. But that's very, very good company. Man, there's so many. DC Brow does a really good job. That's obviously out of DC. Really, man, if it's IPA, I will at least give it a shot.
Okay. Are you a dark beer or a light beer kind of guy?
Well, IPA is pretty dark as it is, and that's pretty much where I'll stay is with IPAs.
Okay. And did your beer drinking have to slow down with this rapid weight loss?
It did, unfortunately. And now I'm back to, I'm like kind of maintaining now. I could probably lose like 5 more, but now that I'm back to drinking as much as I did before, I'm just kind of like maintaining my level.
All right, awesome. Well, I'll ask you a couple more questions before we wrap this up. Where did you go to school? Did you go local?
Yeah, local. Calvert County, Maryland. I went to high school at Calvert High.
Okay.
And then I went to community college right around the corner from there as well.
Which one?
College of Southern Maryland. And it was the Calvert.
Okay,
Calvert
that's
branch.
actually that is surprisingly one I am unfamiliar with.
Well, it's a community college. So.
Well, I mean, like I played against BMCC.
Okay.
So it's not that it was a community college. I pride myself on knowing like obscure schools. So I know a lot of Maryland region colleges, universities, like Mount St. Mary's, Towson, of course BMCC, wait, I'm sorry, am I saying it wrong now? Maryland, Baltimore County. There you go. Anyway, okay. Let me think. What else? You said mention no kids.
No
Future
kids,
plans?
no wife. Maybe one day, if I could find someone to deal with me watching football 3 days a week, talking about it the other 4 days a week, that wants to watch sports and listen to heavy metal music when we ride in the car, then yeah, maybe I'll do that one day.
There you go. And it's going to turn at some point from the heavy metal to podcasts and talk. Or maybe you don't listen to podcasts.
I do. No, I do. I do. When I go to the gym, I listen to podcasts the whole time I'm there. So.
Well, if it gives you any incentive, I'm now engaged to a beautiful woman who puts up with all the football. She actually watches the documentaries now. Is totally into it. So it is possible. So there's something to strive for. In fact, she just came home the other day with this little trinket. She said, I picked this up for you. It's a nice little. I guess it's silver. It's pretty fucking cool. So I get blessed with these little gifts now.
She's a keeper.
Anything else? She is absolutely a keeper. Well, that's why I put a ring on it.
She's the 101 in Dynasty leagues of women.
There you go. I'm hoping to keep her. We'll see. If my fantasy records continue the way they're going right now, then I might lose out. All right, so why don't you take a moment to plug your show that I just mentioned?
Sure, yeah. It's
amazing podcast. And real quick, before you do that, I just want to tell you, I was floored when I originally got the DLF app for the podcast, going back about a year ago now. And you know what? This might have been one of the conversations we had. You had Matt Harmon on before he got hired by the NFL, and he was talking about the perception, and I was flying back. I think I was flying back from the Senior Bowl, and I was like, "What? I'm in a football mood. I need to listen to something." It was then, because I was showing you the pictures of Jay Gruden, that I was hanging out with Jay Gruden, because you're a Redskins. And you're like, "Oh, that's pretty awesome." And I remember downloading the app and just thinking this thing was amazing, like beautiful. So just for that fact alone, I mean, the shows are great, but just for that alone, you guys should be going and downloading the DLF app and listening to these podcasts. But go ahead now.
I do the DLF podcast pretty much weekly. There's 3 of us, and we rotate, but I'm on more often than not. So we record Tuesday nights. Usually it drops around midday Wednesday. We do it every week of the year. We have different guests on talking about Dynasty, talking about strategy, the philosophy of Dynasty, just fantasy football in general. We try to keep it light, a few jokes here and there, and it's a pretty good show. We have a lot of big guests on, and then also I write from time to time on DynastyLeagueFootball.com, And it's a great site. I mean, everybody on there is pretty insightful, and they all bring something different to the table. You know, very, very talented group of guys over there. Guys and girls, actually, now.
Absolutely, and everybody over there, class act. So, the show is great. The podcasts are great, insightful, and as he mentioned, if you were catching this earlier, you pretty much can get a free subscription, just with their partners they're working with and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's in your best interest to be checking out Karl if you're not already following him. Anything else you'd like to impart wisdom-wise? Before we end this thing?
I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
All right. Well, I want to thank you again for taking the time. This was probably 3 times longer that I've had you than what people are actually going to see. And again, if some of this video or audio is a little rough or choppy, if anybody's watching and you're technically advanced and want to help produce this, by all means, let me know. I'm not afraid to say that I could use a little assistance with that, but for the most part, it's going well. And find Karl. His Twitter handle's right there, right on top of his name, at Karl Safchick on Twitter. You can find the DLF football, and that's gonna do it for another Hanging Einstein. Thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you next time with another great guest.
Thanks, Andy.